Good evening, salam, namaste to all our viewers and watchers wherever you are in the world. We are proud once again to present you with this program, Gateway Gazette Bulletin today. This is a news and views bulletin aired every Thursday 8:30 p.m. UK time from MA TV studios. We have been bringing this program to you for the last 11 years. We are very pleased to say that during these 11 years we have been the voice of the voiceless minorities of the world. We especially focus on Asia and particularly so on Pakistan. We have done programs for Rohingya Muslims, for Hazara community in Quetta, Pakistan. We have spoken for the Hindus in Pakistan. We have spoken for the Muslims in India. We have spoken for the minorities wherever they are, from Kashmir to Palestine to Bosnia, everywhere in the world. And today, I am very pleased to say that we will be doing a special program for the Christians of Pakistan. We welcome you to this show. Before we go any further, I would like to introduce to you two very special people who are joining me for this show in the studio today. On my right hand side is Miss Anita Injili. Anita, we welcome you to this show, Gateway Gazette, and I hope you will enjoy this show and people will learn from you. So Anita is a student of politics and economics, and she's also a social scientist and a social activist. She enjoys writing and participating in the societal events. And I think it's our privilege today to have Anita Injili with us in the studio today. Welcome, Anita. And on my left side, we've got a very learned gentleman who is a doctor by profession. But in addition to this, maybe above all this, he is the CEO of an international fund called Barnabas Fund, but he is the CEO for Barnabas Fund UK, Dr. David Dean. Dr. Dean, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
With these two, one gentleman and one lady, we are going to be discussing the scope, the history, the vision and the mission of the organization which Dr. David Dean heads as CEO. To start the program off, I would like to request Anita if she would maybe begin by asking something to our guest, Dr. David Dean.
Hi, Dr. Dean. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's a real honor to have you. Thank you. Firstly, a very broad and wide question. Could you give us a brief history on the Barnabas Fund, when it was funded, and the vision behind it, why it was started in the first place?
Yes. So in 1989, there was a conference held for discussion and consideration of the needs of Christians in Muslim-majority countries. The conference was held in Cyprus, and the outcome of that conference was twofold. One which, the first of which was to research. We've always had a heavy academic focus as an organisation, to research into the causes. Why is it that Christians, when they're in a minority, are persecuted? And then the second aspect of the vision was relief. And it might seem strange, but I think of it from a medical perspective. It's not just that we need to relieve the symptoms, but also, as Dr. Anjili would know, we need to address the root cause, find out what the root cause is. So we've always done both of those. So our vision is to, from the compassion that we have because of our faith in Jesus, to act for the sake and cause of Christians with truth and in righteousness and always with justice. So we produce material, we encourage our supporters to pray, we encourage them to give, and as a fund, when they give, we channel those gifts from Christians, through Christians, to Christians.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very educating to me, Dr. Dean. I of course do receive the Barnabas magazine at home and browse through it. I always read the articles, especially the ones that are about Pakistan and some other interesting thing. But I did not know that the organization was really as young as you said. It was founded in 89?
89. So we're less than 30 years old. And that was when the conference was held.
Yes.
So in 1990, I joined, we were then in, I'd just finished school, we were then in East London. And we didn't form until a few years later.
So it's even younger than that.
Even younger than that. So less than 30 years old.
Right. You did mention the word Cyprus and the fact that the conference was held in Cyprus. Does the fact that it was in Cyprus that this all was initiated have anything to do with Barnabas?
Yes. So Barnabas is a character in the New Testament, and we can read about him in Acts. It's actually a nickname.
Yes.
And not many people know that Barnabas was actually called Joseph. But he was given the nickname Barnabas because it means son of encouragement. And that was a nickname that has stuck. I mean, Christian itself was a nickname given to Christians, and it's a nickname that has stuck. And that's what we want to be, and what we seek to do for persecuted Christians is to encourage them. They're not forgotten, they're not alone, and though their needs may be many and varied, we'll do what we can to help them in that.
So you have pointed out that you are a Christian organization that works specifically for Christians, and taking from the biblical character Barnabas, who was nicknamed the son of encouragement, and you are encouraging the Christians, you are encouraging the people. And does that mean that you are working in an advisory capacity or a lobbying capacity? What sort of job do you really do, if you may?
So what we do is to encourage our supporters in the UK, but also around the world, to not just consider, but to live out the reality that the church, the body of Christ, is one body. So Paul in the New Testament talks about the body of Christ, and if one part hurts, the other parts, all the parts hurt. And so what we do is to encourage empathy, encourage prayer, encourage advocacy, and then encourage giving. And Christians are known as being generous, and our supporters are incredibly generous. Even since COVID, giving has increased rather than decreased. We do get involved in advocacy, but primarily as a ministry, as a church-based organisation, we function spiritually, we encourage prayer, and then we meet the practical needs as well as the spiritual needs of Christians.
I can almost see a question on Anita's face. I think she wants to ask, and maybe go ahead, Anita. What is it?
So you mentioned the term advocacy.
Yes.
In terms of maybe putting the two words, lobbying and advocacy, together or interchangeably, could you educate us on the difference between the two terms and how they can be used, whether there's one specific meaning for one, the terms lobbying and advocacy?
Yes. So advocacy is arguing in favour of a cause. Arguing in favour of a cause. And in some countries lawyers are called advocates. Lobbying can be considered a subset, a specific kind of advocacy. So there is a difference. Advocacy, arguing in favour of a cause. Lobbying, I would describe as an attempt to influence a public figure, usually most commonly a politician. So those who advocate or engage in advocacy by lobbying are attempting to influence a public official in order to argue in favour of a cause or as part of that. So we don't specifically engage in lobbying. We do encourage our supporters to write to their elected representatives. We do encourage our supporters to sign petitions. We are sending one this week to Prime Minister Johnson regarding the recognition, calling on the government to recognise the Armenian genocide. The most recent ones we've done, we had one ahead of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which was due to be held in Rwanda, didn't actually happen, about calling on Commonwealth heads of government to recognise the anti-Christian violence in Nigeria. And then what we're currently encouraging supporters to do is to write to their MPs to ask whether the UK government will consider the specific needs of Christians in Afghanistan. I'm not sure how many Christians there will be amongst the 15,000 who've already come, but we're encouraging our supporters to ask their elected representatives if those needs can be considered.
I mean, you've mentioned quite a few countries there. What sort of projects do you have in those countries, and what kind of ranging countries do you have? Is it very focused? Is it quite widespread? If you could expand on that a little bit.
So we started meeting the needs of Christians in Muslim majority countries, but now we help Christians wherever they are. We work in over 70 countries around the world. No matter what their needs are, no matter who's doing the persecution, and lots of different isms will persecute Christians. It's not just political Islam, Islamism, if you like. And then the kinds of projects that we get involved in, I mentioned spiritual projects, but also material projects. We do a lot of training of leaders. We fund a lot of schools, over 100 schools in Pakistan. We help church leaders and others with income generation. My medical background comes in helpful because we get involved in health projects. We resource churches with spiritual resources, particularly online ones now. We launched a new website last year called Barnabas Today, specifically giving online resources from the Global South for the Global South, so not so much from a Western perspective. And then always, whenever there's an emergency, we'll help. So we're getting involved in helping to try and meet some of the needs of Afghan Christians at the moment.
Thank you very much. Dr. Dean, can I just sort of elaborate on the information that you have already given us? First of all, I once read somewhere, somebody said, that it would be a better place if all the isms became was-isms, but we are still in isms.
Yes.
Hopefully one day they will all be story of the past and we can live in reasonable, we are always going to have different religions, but rather than being so intolerant of each other, being so, dogmatic and persecuting each other, I hope things were better. You mentioned something about Pakistan and maybe running about 100 schools. Now, in context of Pakistan, as we all know, and we have spoken from this platform many, many times over the last 11 years, there are some very special challenges, specific challenges that are faced by Pakistani Christians, and some of them are very horrific and very troubling. I'm thinking about the abduction of girls in Pakistan, especially Hindu, Christian girls, and their forced marriages, their conversion overnight, and all that sort of thing. This is not something that we Christians are saying. Americans, independent press, Amnesty International, and other human rights organizations throughout the world, they are focusing on it. It can be denied by certain people in Pakistan, by certain aspects or certain areas, but we know these are facts. Now, which brings me to the question, is Barnabas Fund doing anything in this regard, or is this out of the scope of what Barnabas does?
It's a good question. It's not outside the scope. Any needs that persecuted Christians have, and they present to us, if we can help, we will. So specifically for young women and girls who are abducted, we are involved in giving legal assistance, and then also a safe house as well. And that's the specific needs, and we're involved in many other projects throughout Pakistan, but on those specific needs, legal aid, legal assistance, and then a safe house for them and their families.
Thank you very much. Dr. Dean, you further also mentioned about Afghanistan. Now, the world doesn't realize this, but there are actually Christians in Afghanistan. There were, there are, and hopefully there will always be Christians in Afghanistan. And as the world has, the Western world, has opened its arms to receive the persecuted people from Afghanistan, people who have nowhere to go, and that's a very good thing to do. And I always want to point out that this is a Judeo-Christian tradition of the West, which makes us open our arms and receive people regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of whatever. It's a point that we must note that while the West is opening its arms to receive these people from Afghanistan, I still have to see a proper Muslim country who has opened their arms and taken thousands of in. And these are not weak or poor Muslim countries that I'm talking about. There are over 50 Muslim countries in the world, and we do not see the type of response that the Western world, the Christian world, so-called the infidel world, according to the Taliban, has put to receive it. Now, what I really wanted to ask was, what, if anything, is Barnabas Fund doing specifically for the Christians from Afghanistan?
So we are in conversation with our own government and a number of international governments to ask whether they will house specifically Christian Afghan families, and those are ongoing. What we have been able to do, which is just more practical, is to help Afghan Christians to neighbouring countries to cross land borders. So dozens of families so far to a neighbouring country, and we're continuing to negotiate and to advocate the cause of Afghan Christians. There are many people in Afghanistan who are at risk, but Christians are at increased risk. They're at additional risk, and we're asking our government and other governments to recognise that. Even if governments won't receive families, we can do what we can in terms of helping people to cross land borders.
Anita, would you like to ask?
Well, you've mentioned a number of projects in your answers, and I just wanted to ask, how are these projects being funded? Okay. How is Barnabas funded?
Yes. So our funding comes from supporters, and most of our supporters are individuals or families or church congregations. So they give sometimes regularly, other times or in addition. They might give because we have a specific appeal. So we had an appeal very recently with the needs of Christians in Afghanistan. And as I said, our supporters are very generous, and they've responded since COVID very generously. We had a specific COVID appeal, and that's still continuing to generate donations from our supporters. But we're supporter financed, mostly individuals, families and Christians.
And is this finance tax deductible?
Yes, so anybody who gives and pays tax to the UK government can reclaim or can authorise us to reclaim the tax from their gift. Dr. Injili already mentioned our magazine. It's free. It's also available online. We produce 6 a year, and within every magazine there's details of how supporters can get in touch for more information and or to give.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Dean, you have mentioned about the donations that are funding all these projects in various Christian lands, or in various lands where there are Christians, especially Christians that are persecuted and all. As a student of church history, I find it very interesting that years ago, when Christianity was spread to Africa and Asia and all, people in Western countries, England and Scotland and all these, Germany, various other European countries, America included, they would hope people would save little, maybe save their weekend money, the children and the old ladies would save their pensions to send all that money going to these places. So I think in a historical sense, there is always this idea of save to help the needy. And I think Christianity has spread like that. I'm glad to hear that the Christianity now is in a way being saved by the similar sort of activities. And regarding what is happening in Afghanistan, again, that's a question that's very heavy on my heart. I'm sure it's a question that's heavy on many people's heart. Roughly, how many Christians do you think are there in Afghanistan? What are the numbers we are dealing with?
No one knows the exact numbers, but in the hundreds of families.
Okay.
So then some of the families very large, so a few thousand people, but in a few hundred, we don't know exactly how many. What we do know is the numbers of those we've been able to get across land borders. So a few thousand people and a few hundred families, but those numbers, exact numbers, I couldn't give.
Yes, that's kind of...
One thing maybe just to add is that our founder, Patrick Sukhdev, advised the British government, British military in Afghanistan, so he has quite a specific knowledge of the history of Afghanistan.
Yes.
That's his ethnic background in terms of being Christian.
Northern Pakistan,
Yes.
that area, which is very interesting, because recently, I think it's a year or two ago, they found a cross also, Kawardo cross, which sort of tied the Christian history into Afghanistan and northern areas of Pakistan. You mentioned Armenia, and the genocide in Armenia. It's very unfortunate, I think, that Pakistan is taking the stand right now to sort of dig up the past and bring those dramatized versions of Artugrul Ghazi and Salahuddin Ayyubi and that. And with the current climate, it's not helping the stability of both sides. Do you have any specific thoughts on
Well,
that?
just that I often encourage our supporters to pray for the leaders of various nations. If there's a country or nation that's on their heart, to pray for the leaders of that nation, whatever their political persuasion might be. I think Pakistan does, as many commentators agree, have a quite specific role to play. In terms of the history, and you mentioned some historical figures and impacting the current. One thing that I noted when we had, when you were encouraging people, and I was just doing some research into Armenia and meeting some Armenian Christians, is just the following phrase, that the denial of genocide is the final stage of genocide. So it's not just that when we deny a genocide we are failing to right a wrong, we're actually perpetuating the wrong.
Yes.
If genocide is an attempt to eliminate a people group, then failing to recognise that attempt is also part of the same process. So some of our supporters might have wondered, why are we having a campaign about a recognition of something that happened over 100 years ago? But history, you'll know medically, as it's true in I think most contexts, is a very significant predictor of the future. And that's why we are currently calling on the Prime Minister Johnson to... The UK government has never acknowledged this genocide. Thankfully President Biden did, just this year, the first US president to do so, and we hope that other nations will do the same.
So my question is, what are some of the challenges faced by the Barnabas Fund and also some similar organisations doing very similar work?
Yeah, we're one of a number of organisations, and we do have distinctives, and I mentioned that addressing the research, addressing the causes of persecution. What we've found over the last few years is that Western sanctions can quite severely limit us. We won't transfer money unless it's through the internationally recognised banking system, and sanctions from the West on certain countries mean that we cannot send money into those countries. Legislation is another. In India there's a Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, and unless a body in India is registered with the government they cannot receive money. So sanctions, legislation, corruption and inflation. Also, if we send money to feed hungry Christians in Pakistan and elsewhere, sanctions, because of inflation, because of corruption and because of legislation, we've now added another arm. We've got a donations arm which is very strong, and we've been functioning that way for a long time, but we've added a delivery arm where we collect food. We've launched as an international food bank just this summer, and collecting food, which might sound counterintuitive in the UK and other Western countries, and then shipping it in a container to countries where food is scarce, is actually cheaper than sending the money and then the food being bought there. We'll do both, and but we've just launched food.gives. It has its own website. It's part of one of our projects, but it was Western sanctions that were not crippling us, but preventing us from working effectively in countries where we had been able to up to that point. So we're still going to channel donations from Christians through Christians to Christians, but also collect food here and ship it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are being asked for a break. Ladies and gentlemen who have been watching this show, I'm sure you feel saturated with the information that has been provided by Dr. Dean. Please don't go anywhere. Stay with us. We are going for a very short break and we'll be seeing you very soon again. There is a lot more to discuss and learn, and we will continue this discussion with Miss Injili and with Dr. David Dean on the other side of the break. See you later.
Thank you.
Did you open the bank account?
I did that at the airport in India itself.
How?
With ICICI Bank's UKI mobile app, you can open your current account and transfer money to your loved ones in India instantly.
And the NRI account?
ICICI Bank UK representative came home with a tab and opened my NRI account.
What makes Great Ormond Street Hospital special? Is it that they bring hope to hundreds of thousands of sick children with complex and life-threatening illnesses?
My nurse is called Hayley and she makes me laugh.
Is it that their doctors and nurses provide world-class specialist care? Or is it the special people who support them? Can you help too by giving £3 a month so they can continue to make it an extraordinary place? Please find a special place in your heart for the children. Call 0800 055 7944, go online or text GOSH to 70125. What makes Great Ormond Street Hospital so special? It's you.
Buy both your car and your home insurance with LV, and with our new discount, you'll save 10%. Buy direct at lv.com.
Inspiration comes when we feel something new. Introducing the fully electric Kia EV6 with up to 328-mile range. Inspire your senses. Kia. Movement that inspires.
I wanted to retrain as an engineer, though starting again in your mid-30s is hard. But I never gave up. Amazon supported me. Now I'm getting hands-on experience. And they're even paying for my new qualification. With my Amazon apprenticeship, I can focus on both learning and making my dreams a reality.
An alternative to tablets, Voltarol Back and Muscle Pain Relief Gel, with its powerful anti-inflammatory active ingredient, targets the source of pain, helping to accelerate recovery. It's not just movement, it's enjoying the new bedroom. Voltarol, the joy of movement.
Great British weather. It's unpredictable, but your energy bills don't have to be. Switch to OVO Energy, and you can fix the price of your tariff for up to 2 years. So you always know what to expect. What's more, we provide 100% renewable power. And with over 30,000 excellent reviews on Trustpilot, why not start your switch in just 2 minutes at ovoenergy.com.
Are we taking our last look at them? Are we really saying, goodbye, old friend? With almost 20,000 elephants being killed every year for their ivory, we could be looking at a world without elephants. Please adopt an elephant with WWF for just £3 a month. Call 0800 035 5912 or search WWF Elephants. And let's make sure we're not saying goodbye to one of our oldest friends.
Love that feeling? Join the AA, the UK's #1. Our patrols will usually get you back on the road in around 30 minutes of getting to you. Plus, we'll give you unlimited call-outs, so we'll always be there when you need us. Love that feeling? We'll get you back on the road from £6 a month. The AA. Join today at theaa.com.
Do you like getting more bang for your buck? Well, get on EE and power up 20 pounds with an out-of-this-world 160 gig packed onto a 5G-ready SIM. All on the UK's best network for 5G. Now that's getting more bang for your buck. So get an incredible 160 gig for 20 pounds a month before the 4th of October.
Prescription is perfect. The prescription is actually perfect.
Really clear vision, feel comfortable. These are great.
I think I do need to stress the quality of the glasses. It just feels, really good.
Retail somewhere around £50, something like that. They feel really good quality. They don't feel cheap at all. £6 for everything.
For £6 you really can't go wrong. Even if you've got a backup pair of glasses, I think you really can't go wrong.
When that's the value that you can get, why would you shop anywhere else?
Let's get into it, Peloton.
Let it flow. Reach all the way up.
In 3, 2, 1, go! So many Peloton newbies on the leaderboard today.
Please find a place in your heart for the children. Call 0800 055 7944. Go online or text GOSH to 70125 now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second half of Gateway Gazette show for this evening. For those of you who have been watching us from the start, with me today in the studio are Miss Anita Ingili and Dr. David Dean, and we have been discussing about the work, the mission and the vision behind the Barnabas Fund. Dr. David Dean is the CEO of Barnabas UK, and he is very kindly with us today, and we have been discussing and we have learned so much from him. The discussion was cut short because we had to go on a break. We are back from the break, and maybe Anita, you can continue the discussion with whatever you want to ask him next.
So, Dr. Dean, in the first half of the programme, you mentioned how the fund tries to lobby the British government to make changes internationally. On a more micro level, how can we all, as Christians and as viewers, wherever we come from, how can we all be involved in the work that Barnabas is doing today?
Well, there's 4 verbs that I usually use in response to that, and the 4 verbs are feel, pray, speak and give. I'll say them again: feel, pray, speak and give. And when we say speak, the third of those 4, many people say, well, I'm not a public speaker or I don't have a platform. But the great thing about our democracy is that everybody has a member of parliament. If you're in Scotland, you also have a member of the Scottish Parliament. So we're currently encouraging our supporters to write to their MPs or any elected representatives just to ask whether the specific needs of Afghan Christians can be taken into account in the current situation that there is in Afghanistan. That's part of what we're doing, feeling and praying, not feeling first because it's more important, but feeling before praying, because when I pray for someone having first felt for them, then I pray not so much from my head, but from my heart. So we give a lot of information so that supporters can pray. Included within the magazine is a prayer diary. So we encourage our supporters to pray regularly, to speak and write whenever they can, and to give as they're led.
Thank you very much.
That is very interesting. I've just made a note of these: feel, speak, pray and give. And I note that sometimes the narrative that is spun by the media, of course we are using a media channel right now, is geared to create a response among the viewers and among the listeners. And unfortunately, in Pakistan, the media sometimes does not highlight some of the things that we minorities feel must be highlighted. For example, we have often decried the fact that certain things are happening to minorities in Pakistan, certain events take place, and the media does not give enough coverage, and that is in a way understandable, but in a way that is also very it's something that we don't feel good about it, in the sense that because it is not shown in the context, people cannot feel. And I'm very pleased, Dr. Dean, with your range of things that you are doing. You keep mentioning a magazine, and like I said earlier, I get that magazine, and that's very good. There are 4 colored pictures, and you see the people working at kilns, the people, children carrying baskets or whatever, buckets, and it's very visual. And so you looking at them, you begin to feel what they must be going through. Speaking, of course, like you said, not all of us can be speakers. Some of us, we try, and praying is something that we all can do. And I'm sure when it comes to giving, we can all give. In Christian tradition, in fact, in the biblical narrative, Jesus commanded an old lady who gave 2 mites, very little amount of money, even in those times. But the fact that she gave, it's not how much she gave, but the fact she gave. That's very important. Thank you very much, Dr. Dean. Like I said, you are educating us today. And so I've written down the 4 words that you have taught us. Feel, speak, pray, give. That is, feel for the Christians, persecuted wherever they may be. Speak for the Christians, persecuted wherever they may be. Pray for them, and give whatever you can give. Dr. Dean, this is, like I say, a full classroom course for me. I'm learning so much from you today. Let's go back to the biblical character, Barnabas, that you have said.
Yes.
What do we know about him?
I mentioned earlier something I didn't know, even though I knew his story, is that his name was Joseph.
Yes.
That Barnabas was not his name, but a nickname, but it's one that has stuck. And what we know is that he brought money, he sold a field, he brought money, and he gave it to the apostles. He didn't stipulate how it was to be used. He gave it because he was generous. And generosity, humility, and modesty. He gave it to the apostles so that they could give it to other people. So he didn't want to be the one receiving any gratitude or thanks. And it's not to say that there isn't a time and a place for that. But he was modest about his contribution. He was humble, but he was generous. And as you've said, whether we have a little or a lot, we can be generous with what we have.
That is very interesting. Dr. Dean, I would like to request Anita, if she can read that passage where the facts that you have referred to are recorded for us in the book of Acts. उर्दू की बाइबल में ईमाल की किताब मसीही कलीसिया की तारीख की सबसे पुरानी और सबसे पहली और सबसे मुसद्दका किताब है, the book of Acts of the Apostles. And this particular fact that Dr. Dean referred to is recorded for us in Acts chapter 4 verse 36. Anita, would you please read it for us?
Yes. Joseph, a Levite from Cyprus, whom the apostles called Barnabas, which means son of encouragement, sold a field he owned and brought the money and put it at the apostles' feet.
So this is what he did. He sold his property, and without stipulating what should be done with the money, he brought and put it at the apostles' feet. And that is a beautiful story, because that is exactly what Barnabas Fund endeavors to do.
That's it.
When people bring them funds, they're at the feet of the apostles, at the church, to be used in a worthy way, in the way that they find best. I also find, Dr. Dean, another little passage where we learn that Barnabas not only brought money to the church and to the apostles, he also defended Paul.
Yes.
You know, Paul, in the church history and in the history of Christianity, Paul was one of the persecutors. He was Saul. He really liked going after and murdering, killing, torturing, doing whatever he could do. Jew of the Jews, he's called, and he did that. But then there was a conversion experience. Lord Jesus appeared to him, and then he became a Christian, and he wanted to do something for the church, and the church didn't believe him. And this is where Barnabas becomes another agent. Anita, could you read Acts 9:27, and we see that story. So we see another aspect of Barnabas here, bringing money and then defending a Christian. Go.
But Barnabas took him and brought him to the apostles. He told them how Saul on his journey had seen the Lord, and that the Lord had spoken to him, and how in Damascus he had preached fearlessly in the name of Jesus.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is.
Dr. Dean, please, your thoughts.
Well, just that when the majority view or the loudest view was, we have to be careful here of this person, he was willing to put himself out. And then we there's another reference also in the book of Acts in chapter 11.
Let's see if we can find that.
Yeah, so we read in Acts 11, and then from verse 25.
Yes.
So then Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul, and when he found him, he brought him to Antioch. And then we read, so for a whole year Barnabas and Saul met with the church and taught great numbers of people. And then, this is the other nickname, the disciples were called Christians first at Antioch. So yes. Christians as a nickname has stuck, Barnabas as a nickname has stuck, and it was because he was an encourager. He thought more, I believe, about the needs of others than he did about his own needs or his own safety and welfare. Again, there's a place for that. We all need to look after ourselves. I often think about travelling with children when we used to fly before COVID, but the meal you can give to your child before you feed yourself. The oxygen mask you first have to put on yourself before you put on somebody else. So keeping oneself alive, yes, but why? So that we can help others. And Barnabas wasn't just doing this as any parent would do for their natural children. He was doing this for Saul, who became Paul, and he had in mind the needs of Christians who were in need.
Dr. Dean, you have been to Cyprus.
I've not been to Cyprus.
You have not been to Cyprus,
No.
but I understand the church there takes Barnabas as their spiritual father.
So he's a saint in many ways, a spiritual father.
Right.
And it's not a bad one to have.
No, exactly. I mean, as we study about him, the fact that he brought his money, he started defending one of the earliest Christians, and what a Christian he was, Paul.
Yes.
He defended him, and Barnabas was. And then we are also told that he took a missionary journey from Jerusalem to Antioch, the one that we have referred to. And then later on, Barnabas and Paul, they separated, and they both went their own ways, planting churches and doing it, not in a bad way, but they were doing that. And so I think just studying the story of Barnabas can be such a powerful incentive for Christians to do the sort of things that you're doing. Dr. Patrick Sukhdev, I'm very much interested in that man because he comes from the same place where I come from.
Yes.
He's originally from Pakistan, northern part, I'm from the central part. But I think when the debate or the discussion must have taken place, he would have given his views why the fund should be called Barnabas. Any stories on that?
Well, just I know that Patrick and Rosemary, his wife, were in London and were ministering to Christians, some of whom had come from other faith backgrounds, and Patrick himself has come from an Islamic faith background.
Yes.
And so he has a specific empathy and consideration, knowledge of the needs of those who might be the only Christian in their sphere. So those who do follow Christ from other faith backgrounds, we always have a specific concern for them, because often their faith family is their only family. I have a faith family, but I also have a natural family. For those who've had to leave their family, or their family have left them because they follow Christ, their faith family is their only family. And yes, as I said, I finished my schooling, my GCSEs in 1990, and spent some of that summer before Barnabas Fund actually became Barnabas Fund, but ministering, being part of the ministry that was at that time in London. And now we're no longer based there, but got our UK base and also based internationally around the world. But Barnabas, it's I mean, you know, Christians in Pakistan, we think about Thomas and his journey, the journey of the Apostle Thomas. And so there's something to be commended in all the apostles. But Barnabas, as a follower of Christ who was able to put the needs of others, is an example that we can all follow.
Anita, would you like to read for us Acts chapter 14 verse 12? And there is a lovely passage there. But while she's looking for that, Dr. Dean, I would just like to say it's very important for us to recognize people like Dr. Sukhdev, who has come from Muslim background into Christianity. In the context of Afghanistan, we know in Afghanistan it's the Hanafi school of law, you know, the Sharia interpretation in a Hanafi manner, and there the only way to deal with apostates is death.
You're right.
And for the Afghans in Afghanistan, Christians in Afghanistan, they would have come from mostly from Muslim backgrounds, and so it's very important that the West realizes that they are a targeted group.
Yes.
It's not that we are saying that they should be looked after because they are poor or, you know, because there is war. No, these are a targeted group. They are people that will be hunted for because they are apostates. And I'm not breaking news. I'm not saying something new. This is common knowledge. The only thing is this should be looked at very carefully by the policymakers, so that the people who are there, who are Christians, Afghan origin, should be helped in whatever way we can do. And if they have to be gotten out of there, then of course we should get out. Anita, can you read for us that passage, please?
Yes, this is from Acts 14. I'll start in verse 11.
Please.
When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lycaonian language, "The gods have come down to us in human form." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. The priests of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls and wreaths to the city gates, because he and the crowd wanted to offer sacrifices to them.
What do you say to that, Dr. Dean? I mean, they were being worshipped as gods.
True. It's a little bit later, verse 14, we read that Barnabas and Paul, when they heard of it, tore their clothes, rushed out into the crowd shouting, "Men, why are you doing this? We too are only men, human like you. We are bringing good news." And whether there's often a kind of human tendency to put someone on a pedestal or to see people as different to ourselves. And people like Patrick and his wife Rosemary have done amazing things in over 50 years of ministry. One of his other books is entitled Heroes of Our Faith, and we're just about to bring out a second volume. The story of ordinary Christians who lost their life for the cause of Christ. And we read that as a staff team every day. A verse of scripture, the story of this Christian, either in recent times or going back centuries or even millennia. And then a focus on a hymn or a poem, because it shows us that ordinary people with God can do extraordinary things. And setting up the Barnabas Fund, now we're an international aid agency. It's an extraordinary thing, but ordinary people can do something like that. And I just want to encourage supporters, wherever you may be and whatever you may have or not have, we can all, as we were focusing on earlier, we can all give, we can all pray. We have the capacity to feel, and most of us can speak. And just to do what we can, not to let what we cannot do prevent us from doing what we can.
Absolutely. Dr. Dean, I would just like to re-emphasize the fact that being a Pakistani background, a Christian, I love Pakistan. We have done programs for various sects in Pakistan, groups in Pakistan, minorities. It is not only that we want to speak for Christians today, because we are with an organization head that works only for Christians. That is why we are focusing on Christians. But as I said in my introduction, we have spoken for Hazara community, the Shiites in Quetta when they were killed and all the problems. And Hazara community is having big problems in Afghanistan as well. And there are other communities as well. We do focus on humanity at large. But today's program is about Christians, because our problems in Pakistan are manifold. historical evidence, statistical, Gazette evidence. Then when Pakistan was founded, of course, East Pakistan, West Pakistan together, we had 23% minorities. Now, official statistics, only 3% minorities. What happened to the 20%? We can justify some of that loss with loss of East Pakistan becoming Bangladesh in 1971, but it does not justify all. There is a lot that is happening there which must be stopped. The forced conversion of girls, being picked up, being converted to Islam, married off. We have seen some high profile cases. Not all cases become high profile. There are other problems that are being faced by Christian community, and we as faithful Pakistanis, patriots of our land, we want everybody in Pakistan to be happy. The majority Muslims as well as the minority Christians, minority Hindus, and minority whatever else they may be, as long as they're Pakistanis. We pray for Pakistan. Barnabas Fund is helping one segment of that country, the Christians in Pakistan. Whatever they are doing is helping Pakistan, because Christians, happier Christians in Pakistan will make happier citizens for Pakistan. Dr. Dean, what have you seen has been changed, or what has been accomplished in Pakistan by the Barnabas Fund? What are some of the, you say, okay, Barnabas Fund has been there for so long.
Yes.
This is what we have accomplished.
Yes. So one of the most captivating projects that we've had over recent years is to pay the debt of brick kiln families, bonded labour, as close as one can get to slavery without actually being slavery. It's as close as one can get. And for the price that we might pay for rent or mortgage, debt can be paid. That debt often that has been in that family for generations. And then, so 1,261, and then an additional 100 where those families who've been freed have given voluntarily so that others can have that freedom. And it's not, I have an ICOP card, I can travel to Pakistan, but it's not for me from here to say the system should change. Yeah. What it is for me to do from here, or for us as an organisation to do from here, is to say this is how we can help. So then encouraging, setting up many of those 100 schools I mentioned are to specifically educate brick kiln children, and not just children but adults as well. We've helped in loans for small businesses, rickshaws for example, scholarships for students to go and study. The mobile health clinics, one of those health clinics that we set up last year. Last year was the first year I've not been to Pakistan in a long time, but we're able to set up clinics and probably able to do more good from here than from there. Thank
you very much, Dr. Dean. We are coming to the end of our show, and once again I would like to thank both of my guests today. Anita, thank you very much for joining us today. Dr. Dean, you have been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. I am so much more of an educated man today about the aspects of the work that Barnabas Fund is doing, not only in Pakistan but throughout the world. This program with a prayer for Pakistan. May God bless Pakistan and make it a center of peace, harmony and equality for everybody there. May Pakistan be happy forever. Thank you very much for watching the show.